Alright, so we have another game here in the Caro Kann that I wanted to show you. My opponent's rated 1433, and my rating at this point is 1481 on the free internet chess server. You'll have to excuse my voice a little bit. I've got a cold, so I'm sorry. But e4, c6, d4, d5, standard stuff. e5, he plays the advanced variation. I always play bishop f5 here. You've seen it in my other game, and you'll see it a lot in the future. My opponent played knight c3 here, which is fine. I played e6, closing up the middle. He then played a3. I think he was afraid of my bishop pinning his knight here. I'm not sure what aspirations he had of this knight. There's no good squares for it to jump out to here, so I'm not sure why he was so interested in protecting it. But it must be his pet move to play these h6 or a3 and h3 pawns. So I played c5 like I always do. I like to challenge on the queen side always when I'm playing the Caro Kann, and you should too. If you're playing the Caro Kann, the queen side is where your action ought to be in general. Be ready to defend on the king side if you have to, obviously. But this is where you're going to be pushing the action. And my opponent played knight f3 here. Now, I've been criticized in the past before for playing bishop g4 in these sorts of situations, and I've been analyzing it quite a bit, trying to figure out if it's worth it to waste this move. I've been thinking about it more, and I think that because this bishop is trapped outside the pawn chain and there's not a lot of escape squares for it later if the pawns were to start attacking it, you can imagine if you had a pawn on h3 here, that there's a good chance of my bishop getting trapped back here at some point with nowhere else to attack. So I let Fritz spend some time looking at this as well, and Fritz agrees with me right now that bishop g4 is the best move in this situation. This bishop isn't a good bishop for me, and trading it against his strong knight here that defends these center pawns is just really going to make my position much stronger. It's okay to waste a tempo in this situation, in my opinion. Fritz right now is telling me that I'm up by a quarter of a pawn already as black, so I've done more than equalize by making this bishop g4 move. And my opponent played bishop e2 defending the knight, which doesn't really help. Obviously I take and bishop takes, and now these pawns are not nearly as well protected as they were in the past. So c takes d4 is a definite option here. Now I have better. I should have played knight to c6, and I see this now just piling up on this pawn, piling up on this pawn here. My opponent would play bishop e3 defending the pawn, at which point then I would take bishop takes, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my other knight out to the f5 square through e7. He'd probably castle knight f5. There's nothing he can do to defend this pawn anymore. Obviously, like knight takes, queen takes, knight takes isn't any good for him. He can't get his knight out of the way fast enough to get a pawn there, and if he does, his knight has lost all of its good squares. So there's really nothing more he can do. He played knight e2, last-ditch effort to defend it, and after all the trades, you can see his e5 pawn here is very weak. Up to queen c7, attacking that pawn and this pawn, and he's got to find a way to defend them both. This is a good game for black. I've definitely done well to equalize in this situation, and I've opened up the queen side. I'll develop this bishop very soon and get my rook out here in the c file, and have a very good game, at least equal chances. You can imagine maybe queen a4 check, queen c6, queen takes, b takes. You can see how I've got a much stronger presence in the center. His bishop's not looking all that hot because my pawns are dominating that color. And overall, this is a good game for black. But that's not where we went. Bishop takes, and I went ahead and just took c4, c takes d4 right away. He played queen takes d4, and then I pick up a tempo. He's got to move his queen, so he pins the knight, which is fine. It's a good move. Black is better here. So I develop bishop e7. I'm just looking for a chance to develop, and this was a little bit slow. I probably would have been better to play knight g to e7 at this point and come out on the f5 square. But I moved a little too quick, played bishop e7. So my opponent castled. And here I break the pin, and I'll look probably to plant my knight out here and go ahead and trade, or else take this hanging pawn here, because obviously it's just sitting there. Oops. And that's not what happened. That would be silly. So I'm just looking to break this pin and take the pawn after the king takes. I lose my right to castle, which is okay. I've won this pawn. I can now develop. So you can imagine if, say, white does something like this. Queen takes, king takes, and he's everything's stumbling over here. Maybe a rook out, or move the bishop or something like that. Black is obviously better here. I've got a much stronger center. He's got no center pawns. I've got an open file for my rook. the open file for his rook is blocked up by my pawns. Black's just clearly better here. That's not where he went. He went ahead and played queen g4. So he's starting to put pressure on the king side here. Now I'm not castled on the king side yet. I waited to castle here because I was nervous about the mounting pressure, and in hindsight, I wish I'd castled earlier. But it turned out okay. Knight takes e5, and his queen's obviously pressured here, and my opponent makes I think a mistake. He takes the rook on g7. There's two ways I can handle this. I choose probably the less good way. The best way would have been knight takes f3. Check. He has to deal with this check. Moving his king just loses a piece. So he has to play g takes f3, and then bishop f6. My bishop's supported by my knight, knight's supported by my rook, rook is supported by my bishop. This is a nice little setup for these guys. They're all supporting each other. And anytime you have minor pieces working against the queen, you're going to want to see them all defending each other in these sorts of ways. You'll look for neat little interactions where you have 2 or 3 minor pieces all supporting each other, and it really stifles the queen's movement. So he has to play back queen to g4. This would have been great. I would have had an open line on his king. I would develop knight e7 here, and whatever he does. I mean, you can imagine, say he plays rook e1 or something like that. His queen's now pinned to his king. He's gonna lose his queen. So like that wouldn't be good for him. He has to make a waste of tempo with something like king h1, which pushes his king farther away from the action. So that in the end game, he has one more step he has to take to get to the pawns. So this is a good, very very good game for black. So I didn't realize that I should take the bishop first. I went ahead and just played bishop f6 right away. And my opponent backed out with queen g3, and then I played knight e7. So I didn't force him to waste that tempo. Now here my opponent, I think, made another big mistake. He came in with bishop g5, and this opens up a lot of tactics for the same sort of reasons as before. Imagine if I play knight takes f3. If he plays queen takes f3, now his bishop hangs, and I just take it. So he would have to play g takes f3, and now bishop takes f3, and again he can't take my bishop because I can pin him to his king and he loses his queen. So either way, my opponent here just hung a piece, and he didn't realize it, and I didn't realize it. So in the game, here we are, bishop g5. I played rook g8, so I missed out on the opportunity to exploit that and win the piece right away. I was moving a little fast at this point. This is move 15, and we were playing 30 minutes per side here, and I'd only used up about 6 minutes of my time. And part of that is because the first 6 or 7 moves are moves that I make almost every game in the Caro Kann, and so I was able to move quickly through those. I'm in book there as far as the book I have in my brain. So I spent about a minute a move on each of these, and this one I just kind of missed the tactic. Now having an open G file here, I haven't done that a lot in the Caro Kann. I'll be more aware of these kind of tactics. So my opponent played h4, defending his bishop, and this isn't. I mean, he's bad at this point. I played h6, attacking the pinned piece. He's pinned to his queen, and now he's got to break this pin by moving the queen, or he's just going to simply lose a piece. I had a couple of options here. I spent a long time thinking on this move because I realized that I can make this work out in my favor if I move carefully. I considered knight f5 instead of h6. Excuse me. His queen would come here. His queen would come to queen f4, and then I would have knight takes f3, and after g takes f3, then I'd play h6, and this would have been real good. It might have been better than what I played. Something like this. Notice again if he takes here, I pin his queen to his king. So there's a lot of opportunities to pin this queen down with that rook, which is why it wasn't so hot the way he attacked my g7 pawn. Opened up a lot of problems for him, and now my uncastled king is safer in the middle than he would have been over here or over here. So it almost worked out well that I waited to castle.